Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Alexis with Recruiting Daily. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. As you can see here, we've got our title screen. You joined us today to talk about humanity, texting, and recruiting, and how Sodexo wins the engagement battle with candidates. Going to thank our sponsor, Text Recruit. Please head on over to Twitter and follow them at Text Recruit, and please check them out at their website, textrecruit.com. A big thanks again to them for being today's sponsor. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys, so thanks for being here. A few housekeeping items. As always, you can hear us. We cannot hear you. However, you can use your control panel to ask questions during the webinar. Raise your hand if you can't get through. I will be monitoring, so don't worry. For any reason we don't get to your question during the conversation today, we'll save it for the end. If we can't get to it at the end because we're just having that much fun, I promise somebody, one of our experts today will get back to you and we will answer all of your questions. And again, if you're following along online, please use hashtag #RDaily and we'll be keeping an eye out for that as well. Today's experts, Heather Thomas from Sodexo, and William Tincup from Recruiting Daily. Please head over and check them out on Twitter as well. You can see their information right here. And these are the two people you're going to be listening to as soon as I am done yapping. Actually, you're going to listen to one of them right now. I'm going to hand it over to Heather, and she's going to give us some greatness from Sodexo. Heather?
Thanks, Alexis. Well, glad to be here. So I'm Heather Thomas, and I lead the strategic sourcing team at Sodexo. Sodexo is the 19th largest employer in the world, and what we provide is quality of life services. So dining, environmental services, and facilities management to lots of different segments like hospitals, schools, universities, government facilities, and even corporations. Kind of a fun fact about Sodexo is we are the largest private employer of dietitians in North America and registered dietitians in the world. So we have a team of over 70 really highly skilled recruiters, and I'm part of the talent acquisition division that fills between 5,000 and 6,000 salaried positions annually. We have frontline hiring as well that's really handled at the local level. So I'm going to be talking about today how we engage the candidates and prospects at the salaried and leadership level. And again, I lead a specialized team that's really been focused on new capabilities and engaging new talent for external hiring, which makes up about 45% of our overall annual hiring.
And the rest is, this is William, and the rest is done internally, right?
And the rest is done internally in promotions, correct?
That's a high number. Y'all's internal mobility number is really, it's quite remarkable. Is that what you, I mean, is that a special, you know, kind of a program that y'all have, or is it a focus for HR and recruiting? Because that number seems really, really high to me, which is good.
Absolutely.
It's a good high.
Yep, Sodexo builds leaders. We build them from our hourly frontline, and we build them internally. It's really a part of our value structure.
I love that. I wish more companies did that. That's fantastic. Thanks, Heather. Well, let's go. Thanks for the context, because I think that it's good for the audience to kind of have a sense of what you're dealing with and how you kind of came into this. So I thank you for kind of stopping down and making sure that we understood, because Sodexo is one of those firms that everyone knows the name, but they might not know exactly what you do, because you're, you know, again, 19th largest company in America. It's kind of big. So we got a couple things on the schedule today. First thing we wanted to talk about is your view of candidates versus prospects. And as we were talking about this, it's very similar to my view. Insofar as there's only 3 relationships a human being can have with a company. You're either, in my opinion, you're either a candidate, an employee, or an alumni. You know, and so I kind of view the world like at one point or another you have a relationship with a company, whether or not you like it or not. And you actually went even further by saying there's a difference between candidates and prospects. So if you don't mind, take us into your worldview of candidates versus prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty passionate about this subject because I have been recruiting for, oh my gosh, do I dare say it, over 20 years, and things have really changed. Technology has really changed how we relate to each other. So for our purposes and what we identify at Sodexo, a candidate is an individual who has applied at some point into our ATS. So they have expressed their interest in us as a company at some point, and we call them a candidate, someone who's filled out an application. A prospect is everybody else. People that we want to know, people that we meet at events and associations, really people in occupations that we eventually would like to attract to work for Sodexo, we consider those prospects.
So the argument years ago of active versus passive. First of all, did you ever believe that, or do you buy into that? And then how does that actually gel with your worldview of prospects versus candidates?
Yeah, great question. I speak on this a number of times. Yes, I used to believe in the active versus passive. CEB Gardner, I think, did us a really huge favor in 2016 when they actually outlined the people in between wholly active and fully passive. And there really are additional targeted searchers and window shoppers in between there. But when you're thinking about prospects, I think it's even more important to realize that technology has increased visibility of people across the world. It has also blurred the line between what is a candidate and what is a prospect. So if I see anyone out on a social page, that person to me is a person. It's a person, it's a profile, it's a prospect. It's never a candidate until they apply into the ATS. So we really have to, as recruiters today, identify the different types of people that we're talking to and then change our engagement to them.
Right. So a couple things there. If someone applied to a job a year ago, so they did take the action, they did raise their hand, if you will, they did apply for the job, they are now in the ATS, but it was a year ago, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever, it was in the past. But at that point, there's still a candidate, not a prospect. Is that right?
Yeah, I would consider them a candidate. I would still use a very human, personal approach,
right.
But I have their contact information and I have an established previous relationship, at least with the brand, right? So my communication to them is going to be a little bit more direct, and I would expect that they would respond in relatively quicker fashion because they know who Sodexo is, and they know at some point they engage with talent acquisition. Right. CEB, again, really talked about that passive poachable, and we know 66% of people said for the right opportunity that provided stretch and growth, they would consider an opportunity. We have to keep in mind, though, how we reach them, how we engage them, and the time that it takes for them to engage back. That's a whole new echelon, and you really got to separate the two.
Right. In your opinion, do people apply to jobs or do they apply to Sodexo?
Ooh, that's a little bit of both. But people are still applying to particular levels of positions. But in an organization the size of Sodexo, right, you can see a title position, say director or manager, and think it's the right level, but we may level things differently. So we do employ a lot of talent rediscovery for individuals who have been previous candidates, and we hope to provide the career coaching as we would for a prospect. So very human engagement to get them to applying to the right position. So it's definitely circular with talent at the center, very talent-centric.
Do you have anybody on the team that will kind of argue some of the semantics? Let's say someone gets to the entire application all the way but the last question, or submit, and doesn't submit. So are they a candidate or are they still a prospect? Do you have anybody on your team that kind of gets into the semantics of these things?
Yeah, we definitely delve in, and Sodexo, being the organization that they are, and we just have some fantastic people that really break that down. We look at, again, rediscovery. How do we get to those individuals? Every year we're trying to improve our candidate experience. So by no means do we get it perfect all the time, but we try to get better every year.
What's great is there's a clear line of demarcation. That's what I love about it. Is they've applied. So everything before the they've applied is really kind of CRM and sourcing. You know, you find the person, which is hard enough, then you market to the person, and then at one point they take an action. And it's a clear action, you know, it's an application. It couldn't be any clearer than that. They fill that out, and then they go into the ATS, which is good because it also handles some of the compliance things that need to be handled. And there's a clear line of the line of demarcation between prospect and candidate. And I guess the next line for y'all is, you know, between there and when they are accepted into a job and they become an employee.
Absolutely. And you brought out a really good point. One of the biggest changes for us over the last 5 years has been the implementation of a CRM system. So we consider our prospects and our candidates, you know, like customers. Not only are we working to brand who Sodexo is, again, as you mentioned, one of the biggest named companies that nobody really knows, especially in some areas where we are have new capabilities, let's say in construction engineering, and the way that we're able to now increase the visibility to those talent profiles, those talent pipelines, is through the use of a CRM tool. So we implemented that about 5 years ago, and it's absolutely the backbone to our recruitment marketing engine. And a lot of people get me confused with, you know, do I do the recruitment marketing? No, I really fill the CRM with the people that are employment branding people who do amazing work. How they then take what we put into the CRM and we segment it for them, and they use the content to push that out on a regular basis to, you know, include that visibility and those touch points with that talent.
Can you imagine a world where we didn't have CRMs?
I remember Excel spreadsheets.
I mean, it's funny because I don't think most recruiters now that you know what you know, it's why would you ever go back? It's like, well, you know, you build the personas, you load it up with great data, and then you market to people. And then again, you're just putting great content against an audience, and if as they see something that they really find and fall in love with, they take an action. And that's what it's true in customer marketing, you know, everything that we do on the front end and B2C marketing, if you will. It's also true here. So I don't think I could imagine a world without CRMs, and it's interesting the relationship between the CRMs and ATSs nowadays. Because they both capture great data, but they're doing different activities, completely different activities. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you a little bit. Let's go to the next slide for us. You know, we've got communication versus sourcing tools, and as we've talked about this is the, you know, meet them where they are tools versus find them where they are. And so I want to get your worldview on communication versus sourcing. In general, and then the tools, the toolbox that you use to kind of both communicate with someone and source someone.
Yeah, so let me start with the sourcing toolbox first, because I think, again, this is an area that you know, wasn't really clear even to me for a long time. All these great new tools coming out, and you try it and you play with it, and then you have to kind of figure out, where does this really actually fit? And it was the same experience that we kind of had with Text Recruit as well. So, I come from the sourcing world, so, you know, still love LinkedIn. If it's still working well for you, you keep using it. But I could recognize that in using in-mails were no longer working, and if you use templates, I mean, any talent can see those from a mile away. Using Boolean strings and events and associations and open web and all those sourcing tools have always just been a natural part of my toolbox. And then as CRM came into play, now much of that sourcing to find the who do we want to talk to, we really rely heavily now on our CRM. But that's where my brain started to shift on, okay, we have all these sourcing tools to find the who, but the world has changed, the talent has changed. It's easy to find any person, but it's really hard to get them to engage with you via phone, right? A voice-to-voice communication. Mm-hmm. It's really tough to get them to reply to your messages. So sourcing has almost evolved yet again from finding the who to finding the how do you engage with them. So the communication toolbox has almost become more important. Yes, you've got emails, and yeah, I can see when someone opens my email, and I can direct message them on Twitter, and don't forget the telephone, right? I love my telephone still. Voicemails, though, are decreasing in importance. And so that's what kind of drove us to also looking at how to use text messaging, but to drive it to engagement. So Sourcing Toolbox may find the who, but communication does everything else. All the other engagements of this person, the what, how, why, when, where. So you got to have both.
Right. It's interesting because on the sourcing side, as you delineate, there's more tools. I mean, literally, a tool will be born today that'll help us source. Somewhere in the world, a tool has already been born, and we'll use it, or we'll not use it, whatever. It's I'd say that they're Johnny-come-lately, but basically, sourcing tools, you could throw a rock and find a sourcing tool, and all of them are good if you use them for what they need. Like if you need to find personal email addresses, there's tools for that. You want to find personal cell phone numbers, there's tools for that. You want to find their Gmail accounts, there's tools for that. Like you can literally find a tool that can get you to find the person. Like I get that. The communication, I don't see those tools being born every day. You know what I mean? I don't see a new way to email, a new way to InMail, a new way to fax, a new way to I can't believe I just said that. A new way to voicemail, a new way to direct message, a new way to do these things. There's not new ways to do it. So it's not like we're loaded up with new ways to communicate. And I guess my question being is, what's your on the communication side? What's your favorite kind of formula? Where do you know that you're starting to give success with somebody if they fall into a pattern of, call, voicemail, text, direct message? Like is there a formula? And do you have kind of a favorite pitter-patter that a candidate starts to follow?
It's going to sound so overly simplistic and maybe old-fashioned. It's when you're just having a conversation, you're just having a dialogue. When you have, and I cannot emphasize enough the power of a 15-minute voice-to-voice conversation. So whatever I need to do to drive to that connection makes all the difference. Because in that 15 minutes, I'm telling them the Sodexo story, they're telling me their story. Now we have a human connection that resonates. Whether we do nothing from the forward, we have that. So I can tell when I send an email if someone says, yeah, I might be available 3 o'clock. It's simple. And then I reply, well, 3 isn't going to work for me. Here's my schedule. Get on my schedule. And then after that, you can even through text messaging, especially now, as you'll see a little bit later, it's a banter of, sounds good, thanks. Talk to you at 3. It's very simplified and it's human. I hate to simplify it to that, but that's what it feels like.
No, but what I love about that is everything is geared towards get to the connection. So if it's 2 phone calls, 3 voicemails, 5 texts, direct message, whatever, voicemail, that doesn't matter. Whatever it takes there, the most important part is get to the connection. Once you've had the connection, now you're either moving in the right direction or you've had the connection and it will go nowhere. But that's okay because you've had the connection.
Yep.
Love it. I 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 love it. All right, so let's go back to sourcing for just a second. Sorry, Lex. Your favorite tools right now? Like if you were to have to source something after this webinar, what tools would your go-to tools? What are your go-to tools for sourcing?
Can I still say my CRM? Am I allowed to be that?
Absolutely.
And, LinkedIn still works if you're using it the right way. I build my network. I focus on that and, giving away to the community. I think the other thing is becoming becoming an industry insider. So whatever enables that, And then I still speak in Boolean, so I still Google. I know it's so old school, but I do.
That's perfect. Hey, I've actually got a question from the audience, and I think it's a really good one. Daniel writes, what do you think about telephone screening questions, like automated voicemail screening questions for low skill, entry-level positions?
Great. I mean, that's a really great question, and I think Daniel sent that in, right?
He did, Daniel Kwan.
So, two things come to mind about that, and I want to be transparent as well, because as you learn about how we align the Text Recruit tool to our salaried positions, there's actually a launch going on this week to our lower level, lower skill positions in the hourly, like prep cooks, grill cooks, and deli workers. So they're actually launching a Text Recruit campaign that's very well mapped out, that has 4 automated text interactions that then drive that candidate to a phone screen to the recruiter. So within 4 interactions, they actually have the link to the time trade schedule for that recruiter for their phone screen. So I definitely support that. I think it's great. But again, notice that we're driving to a conversation very, very quickly. And when I'm talking about salaried positions, and this is the second point, I'm not really talking about screening someone in or screening them out for a particular position. So we have, as I mentioned, those 70 recruiters on 7 different recruitment teams. And yes, they have many open positions that they fill. So my team, when we're focused on the prospects, we're trying to find out how we're going to fit that person into a future opportunity, and we're not screening them out for a particular position. So I think it's using the tool in a very clear way.
Very good, very good, very, very, very good. A quick question around, what if someone, because we're trying to drive towards the connection, so all of our communication tools are kind of helping us get to that place, whether or not it's all text or voicemail or whatever, but we're trying to get them on the phone call, trying to have a personal connection, if you will. What if you have a candidate that just avoids that for whatever reason? They can't do that, or they don't want to do that. What is that a signal to you, or has that ever happened to you?
I'm trying to think if I've ever had it happen. I'm going to be honest, I cannot think of a single time where someone has not appreciated a voice-to-voice call. Even when we're talking about disability and inclusion, right. People will send the voice-to-voice communications. Everyone seems to, this is my personal opinion, Heather says, I think we're lacking that personal connection. I think of in 2002, or in 2000, when we thought that the job boards would solve our technological issues, but then I heard reverberating year over year, now I apply and I never get a phone call back. Right. Then I saw recruiters work very hard at replying quickly so that people didn't feel like their application was going into a black hole. And then the response was, oh, now I get a flesh letter in less than 48 hours, so no one even read my resume. So this novel idea of picking up the phone and having a quick 10 to 15 minute conversation seems to be very out there.
It's funny, even the name of the webinar, here we are talking about humanity at the same time that most of the market is talking about technology and AI and everything else that, it's more about technology than it is about humanity. And here we are talking about humanity. It's funny and ironic. I do want to get to Ashley's question real quick, because I think it's on point for what we're talking about right now. She asked, do you have a Text Recruit integration with your ATS? So kind of a nerdy question, but the idea of do you already have these things kind of woven together and connected together?
Great question. So yeah, one of the selling tools for us in using Text Recruit is that the integration for Text Recruit, the product, is very easy, and so it actually turns your phone numbers green. In our ATS happens to be ISOMs, and our CRM is Avature. It also turns phone numbers green that you find on the web. So it actually works more like a Chrome extension than any type of a layering integration. It's relatively simple. And there were other products that I personally looked at. There's Mighty Text out there, there's AirDroid, there's My SMS. I even know of recruiters who still today use email and text using the whatever the gateway carrier is, right? Those are all possibilities. Sodexo chose Text Recruit because there were future opportunities in terms of automation, in terms of our hourly, as I mentioned before. So we saw that we were going to demo this product in a very singular fashion for the purpose of sourcing and recruiting up front, and we also found many more applications for it. And that's when it shifted from a sourcing tool to, oh my goodness, this is a communication tool for the entire department. And actually someone now is forwardly leading, I'm not leading those initiatives.
Wow. Well, and actually, I think I said it was a nerdy question. I apologize. That I actually like nerdy questions. So
I do too. I'm truly 75% geek. I'm a geek at heart.
Oh, not to offend, Ashley. Alrighty, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so one of the things I want to kind of, because you and I, when we first started kind of battering around this idea, we obviously wanted to have humanity in the title and talk a little bit more about that. Let's just start it with kind of the State of the Union. What else should we do as recruiters, hiring managers, and sourcers to bring humanity into our process more? What else could we be doing?
So, and there's so many layers to this. And again, as I mentioned, since I'm a geek, I literally was a failed computer programmer. So I'm never the smartest in the room, I notice, with technology, but I use technology, again, to drive this human engagement. I love the CRM stuff. And what I've found is that you have to think of what is the goal and the purpose of whatever technology that you're using. So for communication tools, even emails that were being sent, you know, we have the branding communications, and they have a real goal and purpose, touch points, education, research. And then if we're trying to engage those prospects, we had to strip down those communications for human one-to-one engagement, make them more personalized, make them very transparent, drive them to the action of a phone call. And so, you know, I think that you need to put your recruiter hat on, think of the obstacles and the challenges of the people that you're trying to recruit, and think, if I was doing that job, how would I want to be communicated to? So that's one area that I always try and put on, is the occupation I'm trying to recruit.
So you've heard the argument of quality versus quantity probably a 1,000 times in your career. Where does that gel against humanity? Is it more human to be more quantity focused or quality focused, or does that matter?
It's such a great debate. And I'm going to have to spend some time really debating that, I think, with some professionals. But I still say quality and quantity, and yet I still want to do things one-to-one. How we accomplish that is that I am kind of an efficiency, I won't say expert, but again, nerd maybe. So everything that you say yes to me, you better be getting a pretty good return. So again, how did we fall to this let's use Text Recruit? I was emailing people in a particular occupation, and I was noticing the response ratio just tank. And at some point I was like, okay, even sending the email 1 to 10 or even 1 to 50, if I'm getting a terrible response rate, a 0% response rate, then I'm wasting my time. What can I do that's going to be much more effective and get me a better response rate? So the way that I see you can do quality, which is always human, right? Like no one's going to replace us in that. No bot's going to be able to replace that. But the way you get to quantity is by doing what is most effective. And that's where I started, but one by one on my own phone, I started texting some of these people to see if they liked it and to see what the response was. And when I was getting 100% response rate of positivity, and I was getting, greater than 50 to 60% were responding to me, I was like, oh, now I need to systemize this and find a way to bring text messaging actually into my recruiting day and not do the thumb hang, the neck hang and the thumbs that I, give my kids a hard time about.
Okay. So, in your mind, what's the relationship between humanity and the candidate experience? So you've been through this whole process of the Candidate Experience Awards, and this whole thing of basically building up enough of public awareness of what is and what should be a candidate experience. Where does humanity play there? Where does that for you? Is it common sense? Is it a part of the process? Like, where do you feel humanity and candidate experience either rub or where they intersect?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say personally for me, recruiting and helping change people's lives has always been a very human experience. And while we may screen people in or out, and no, I don't remember every candidate I've ever talked to, as a recruiter, and this might be a little ethereal, a little hippie-ish, but I feel like I need to treat every single individual as best as I can, that platinum rule, treat them how I would want to be treated, how they want to be treated, because at the end, I could be on the other side. I remember, in 2008, when a lot of people were laid off, it could have been me. And I guess I think of that every time. How would I want to be recruited for a job? Right.
Which is, again, we all at least should think that thought, because at one point we're going to be on the other side of this bit. What's your take on templates? Like are you are you a templates person, or do you not like templates? Like I've worked with people that never ever use a template, like ever, even for a simple email, just never. They write the email uniquely every time they write an email. Would never ever write a template, use a template for an email. What's your bit on templates?
So I do like templates, again, for certain purposes. I also change up my templates if I don't think they're working. So I kind of track them and nothing scientifically, no specific A/B testing. But I have been known to say I've handwritten an email, and people laugh at me because I say that. And what I mean is it was a brand new, I didn't use a template for that. And sometimes it makes a difference, but I do like to use templates in some sourcing communications because, again, I'm going after quantity, but I strip them down, right, and make sure that they're very resonating with whatever that talent population is.
And templates in terms of texting, is the same bit, or do you have a different bit there?
Yeah, no. So how do you net down what you want to say to someone who has no idea who you are in 160 characters, right? So yeah, another great part about TextRecruit is that you could program in some simple templates, and we tested them with a few people and make sure that they resonated well with them. And it worked, but we kept it. So as we were going into our pilot, we took away any of the campaigning, and we took away anything that was more than one-to-one. So using templates, I think, for one-to-one communication is fantastic, because then you just don't have to rewrite the same thing.
Right. Alrighty, I've got a couple of questions I want to actually ask you. This is from Simona. Do you have a sourcing team? A, are they involved in phone pre-screening or just selecting and screening candidates?
Great question. So our sourcing team now has 5 full-time resources, and so we do passive prospect screening, and the way we think about that is that we are trying to find out what their interest is, and we're doing quick qualifiers, and we know who's going to map well into our organization. And then within that, we're doing a lot of candidate coaching. So again, the sourcing team themselves is talking to a lot of prospects, as many, as 120 in a quarterly period, but they're not screening in or out for a job.
Okay, good. And Ashley has a follow-on question. Will your sourced numbers through TextRecruit be entered into your ATS with that integration, or just identified? Again, that's Ashley.
Can you ask that question again, William?
Sure. Will your source numbers through TextRecruit be entered into your ATS with that integration, or just identified?
So I'm not sure that I fully understand the question, so I'm going to take a crack at it. So we're using our sourcing out of our CRM to engage with prospects, and then when we're talking to them, we're driving them to apply into the ATS. So the TextRecruit messages live within a TextRecruit platform. Not the conversations live in that platform. They don't live in either the CRM or the ATS.
Right.
Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think she's trying to figure out if the numbers populate into the ATS.
The phone numbers.
The phone numbers, yes. It's a good question.
So,
Ashley, I know you're listening. Ask a follow-up, because we probably butchered your question, and I'm going to apologize in advance for that. Let me ask a next question. This is from Danielle. Do you use text for campus recruitment events?
We are looking into that.
Very good question. Very good question. Yeah, it seems like with that audience, that might actually work really, really well. I mean, people under 30, right? Maybe they use texting more than people. maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Last question for right now is, what is the difference in the language you use when texting versus emailing? And that's Alyssa. That's a great question.
That is a great question. Let me give you a couple of quick examples off the top of my head. And I wish I had pulled out some real examples for that initial text message for you, Alyssa. So the first thing, if it's a candidate, let's say in the ATS, and they've applied to a position in the past, the text message might go like this. William, hey, it's Heather at Sodexo. I'm a recruiter. I saw you applied for a position in the past. I have one in NJ, saving on characters there, in New Jersey. Would you be open to discussing it? Hopefully that's under 160 characters. If it's a prospect that has never applied, right, it might be, William, hi, this is Heather, recruiter at Sodexo. I saw that you are an expert in reliability engineering. I have some openings. May I discuss this with you? And typically I'll get a response back. Who are you again? And
where'd you get my number?
That's right. Where'd you get my number? And I can reply, well, I belong to such and such group. I was networking with so-and-so. I'm just very human, whatever the answer is. And if you'd like, I can send you my LinkedIn profile so you can validate who I am. And then if they're like, yes, please do so, then I can send them my URL, and never send a link until we've established that communication. Right.
Because they might, I mean, no one's going to click on the link, or if they do, they're going to think it's spam or something like that. Do you, are you familiar with the concept of catfishing?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that's, are you a catfisher? No. The question is, do you think that makes people, because that happens in our society, do you think that makes people more guarded via text?
I think it makes people skeptical and guarded through everything. I think we are becoming a very highly skeptical society. So your branding face, so if anyone checks out my LinkedIn page, you'll see how visible I am. If you call my phone number, I'm going to pick up the phone. I mean, crazy, right? But I really believe if I'm going after that high regarded talent, that high caliber recruitment, and again, that's my focus in my job, if they need to validate who I am and make sure that I'm not trying to set them up for a catfish situation,
I can't
that
believe we're talking about catfishing. I'm so sorry.
I love that show, actually.
What have I done? Here I took a perfectly good topic and turned it into catfishing. I'm so sorry. All right, let's do the next slide real quick. All right, this is the fun stuff. So when we talk about real life examples, I actually want to go backwards just a bit, and you know, there's a moment when you were looking at a lot of different solutions, and you looked at TextRecruit, and I think at one point you even did a pilot with them. I want to get to, what did your team think? What did they learn? Like, what was the process? Not just for TextRecruit, but for y'all consuming a new technology, a new way to communicate with people. What was that like?
Yeah, and I think it also goes to, the fact that you can never do things on an island, right? Definitely use people in your team. I had an idea of using TextRecruit for sourcing, right? But I brought it to the collective intelligence. TextRecruit is an expensive, pricey platform, and we have an ATS and a CRM and now this other thing. And when I brought it, there were a lot of additional inputs. And I think one of the most fantastic ones was, well, let's see what the recruiters think of this as well. And so we started a pilot with about 10 people, 10 recruiters, plus our sourcing team. And I was really amazed at what happened because the outcome was much different than what I expected. Again, I thought we were just going to use it to tap on the shoulders of prospects and get them to talk to us. Well, the recruiters took this and was like, well, what about candidates in my process? What about reminding them about their interview? What about, I think this is the most amazing, ingenious thing, the recruiters started texting their hiring managers, hey, I sent you an email with that slate. Can you get back to me by 5 o'clock today? So it became this communication tool that they integrated into their entire workday. So our pilot lasted just about 2 or 3 months. The first big question is, were our candidates, were our prospects going to positively receive what we were doing? And TextRecruit, even on TextRecruit's page, you can go read some of the legal stuff of whether, if some people have questions about legalities and stuff, TextRecruit has kind of already broached that. So I really don't think I have to talk about it too much. But we're not selling anything. So we weren't, and that's the other thing, we weren't going to spam anyone. It was going to be used for one-to-one communication. So in doing that, we had 100% positive response rate from our candidates. Real examples like, wow, thanks for reaching out to me. 4:30 today would be best, so you didn't have to play phone tag with the person. Or, wow, I'll definitely check out your other positions. Or I had one individual who messaged me back, and he's like, hey, I'm going to Tahiti on vacation. Can I call you when I get back into town? And I was able to be so personal and so human and be like, oh my gosh, enjoy. I'm jealous. Have a rum drink for me. And then when we talked again on that Monday, I was able to say, how is Tahiti? And he's like, oh my God, you actually remember that. So it became this very personal banter that we then have expanded from 10 recruiters to 40 recruiters, plus now we have these other pilot groups that are piloting the application in other ways.
All right, I got to ask you an etiquette question because I feel like I need to after the catfishing thing. Do you think that there's a kind of, in all communication, we kind of start to judge people? People that might not be able to use language in the most appropriate way. People that use email and they don't understand kind of how to use. They reply all to every email, etc. Like there's a right and wrong, and there's an etiquette. There's a way of doing things. Is there an etiquette in texting? And what I'm really trying to figure out is there style or sophistication, speed? Is there something there that you would maybe not be biased, but maybe think higher of a candidate for their for their knowledge of that etiquette versus, maybe someone that's a little clunky. Maybe they're not great at texting. Let's just call it what it is. They're not great at texting, and they kind of fumble their way through it. Do you find yourself thinking about that stuff at all?
Yeah, I mean, great question. And I think they're concerns any organization, has to consider, right? And again, it depends on the occupation as well, right? Like you might get different texts from construction engineers than you might from VPs of sales, right? So the first etiquette question on how we text out, so I'm what, a generation, I think I'm at the oldest age of the Generation Xer. I'm kind of free-flowing with that. So I used to deliberately misspell things in LinkedIn InMail so that people didn't think that it was a template. So when people make mistakes back, I just figure it's technology. I just don't judge. That's my personal perspective. Other people may have other feelings. I do have higher expectations for high technology positions. If a VP of sales isn't, comfortable with, a platform to do a webinar, or I'd like to do a web interview, that may be a different issue. You are assessing people's technology, but if they're not comfortable with texting, they'll just pick up the phone and call. And I guess
Right.
That's the other cool thing about the Text Recruit platform is that if they do call, and I have about a 6% rate where people will just call me back, you can forward it to your direct phone line. So it kind of takes it away. They can either leave a voicemail or you can have it forwarded. And of course, at any time, anyone can reply stop. And then that they don't want to receive any text messages from you.
That's awesome. You mentioned something really interesting a second ago around collaboration, and I want to kind of get back to it before we move on. Is that this collaboration between your hiring managers, your recruiters, your sourcers, your recruiters, like everyone's collaborating. And when the video interviewing tools just first kind of came out into the marketplace, a lot of people kind of looked at them and said, those are features that really belong somewhere else. And I think they evolved into a place of their collaboration tools, that people would do a video interview and then all the people could look at that and collaborate around what they saw, what they heard, what they think, what they saw, etc. They could collaborate. And I kind of, now that I'm thinking about text recruiting in this way as a communications tool, do you think that you can kind of push that further and make it more of a collaborations tool between all the people that work on the team?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. When we are sourcing, because we have so many similar segments, like we may have people who do environmental services or facilities management, those things are very close in line. The reason why, again, Text Recruit was an attractive tool is that the intelligence of the platform houses the phone number and the name, so you can see all the text communications that person's had with somebody else. So it is its own collaborative tool. How people use that in the future, I'm actually kind of curious to see. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can leverage it. In the future, it would be really cool if the Text Recruit platform could actually email a candidate that's ready for their interview and send them, updated information. So I think there's a lot of automation that can happen because we are so attached to our mobile devices. It's our walking computer.
Right. All right. So before we move on, I got one question from Jonathan. How is Sodexo staying compliant with TCPA and SMS messaging?
So PCPA, I'm not familiar with that particular acronym, and then SMS is obviously what we're talking about in terms of just simple texting. Do you know what PCPA is, William?
I do not know. It's TCPA.
TCPA.
I can't say that I do.
So, sorry, I'm not quite sure what that is. How we're staying compliant is two ways. One, again, one-to-one engagement. We're not spamming, we're not doing campaigns. And the second thing is our talent community, though when you do sign up, does say that you're willing to receive a call from a recruiter, and I believe we're also going to be adding a text message. But again, we're not using an automated text message. We're using as if I was to send William a text message right now. And anyone that's listening, at the end of this call, send me a quick text message if you want to see how it works. I'm going to plan for the next hour to reply to anyone who's interested in texting me on my Text Recruit number.
Okay, good. And Jonathan, I'll look up the TCPA and make sure that I understand it a little bit as well. Let's talk a little bit about some real life examples.
So as I mentioned, some of the engagement dramatically increased. We've had our general response now for over a year is about a 57 response rate in less than 2 hours.
Let's just let that sink in for a second. So 57 out of 100, 57 people responded and within 2 hours. So what is that? Okay, so what is that? What's the strain that puts on the organization? Like if you get 57 people responding, I'm assuming that's a good thing, which of course it is. But like, how do you keep up with that?
It's individuals sending one message at a time. So you have to be prepared and set up to reply to someone within 2 hours. One of the other things, William, that you and I were talking about at the beginning, one of the cool little things I was playing with was you can schedule text messages. So let's say you're sourcing late at night, and you can send a text message to someone and schedule it for 9 a.m. the next morning. And it could be, Jim, in the past, we've talked about facilities management openings. Hey, there's one in West Virginia. I'm going to email you the details. Can we talk about it tomorrow at noon, for example? And then it goes out at 9 a.m., and he replies to me at 9:15 and says, no, I can't talk at noon, but I can talk at 3. So the Text Recruit platform resides on your browser, and it can also reside in your phone so that you can, be a part of the real conversation. We did play around a little bit with campaigns. We had an analyst actually do a campaign of 1 to 30 people. Wow, our brains were kind of blown away because it took her 3.5 hours, 3 to 4 hours in terms of responding to that 57 response rate. Even if the person said, who is this? I might be interested, but I'm not willing to relocate to Illinois. Whatever the different logistics were, we wanted it to be very personal, and we learned don't do more than 1 to 10. And again, that's why we took campaigns completely off the table. And we still are not doing any campaigns today. Another really great example, a real life example, and I know Alexis is kind of going through a few of these. This is what it looks like on the platform. These are real conversations. One time I was at the gym in the morning, and I got a text message from someone I had tried to recruit in the past, and he was like, hey, wanted to give you a heads up. I'm going to use fake names. Roger and William are getting laid off from your competitor, and you might want to be on the phone with them within the next hour. Here are their numbers. Give them a call. How fantastic. It came right to my phone, and that became my very first phone call of the morning. I didn't have to wade through emails, right? That was a personal relationship that he reached out to me to let me know to contact those people.
Oh, that's genius. This is great. This is great. And for the audience's sake, some of this stuff has been redacted because it's personal information. So I would assume that y'all would understand that, but just I know it kind of looks a little icky with the redacted stuff, but that's how we have to do it. This is great. Next one, Lex.
And as you can see, a lot of times, like, if you miss a candidate because, they are a prospect, you miss the window of time, rather than assuming, oh, they blew me off, I can send a quick text message. Sorry I missed you. I know things come up. When can you talk? And it's really saved. It's very effective, and it saves me on efficiency, right? And then it builds the relationship. again, I don't think I could have anticipated that you can build a relationship in 160 characters, but you can.
So I've got to ask kind of and this will be a dumb question, but just bear with me. My 8-year-old takes my phone and texts my wife, or takes her phone and texts me, but he's really into emojis. So I would tell you that I'm not really an emoji person. I don't know what that says about me or about him at 8-year-old. And so our rule is, hey, use complete sentences, and then you can use whatever emojis you want to, but just get to the emojis after you've actually said something of substance. And kidding aside, what do you think when you see emojis in texting like this? Even though it is this, we could be looking at anybody's phone right now. That's what I love about this, is we could literally be looking at anybody's phone. This is a kind of a conversation that anyone would have on their phone. So the question is, what do you think about emojis?
It's really a great question, William, because it also plays into why I push so hard for us to do Text Recruit. If you're using technology and you have in your mind what your goal is when you're using that technology, and then you can, like you were talking about speed and getting to quantity. When I am texting from my Text Recruit number, I have that etiquette. So I guess I do have some etiquette things in mind. I don't use emojis when I'm texting there. And that's why I did need to separate my personal texting from my professional texting. So when I say that I got that text message from Text Recruit on my phone, Text Recruit comes from a different app. And then it comes from, and it shows me the candidate's name. So I've programmed the name into the system because we're having a conversation. And so it doesn't come into my personal text messages. So one of the things that I kind of sold my boss on when I said, I need this tool because I don't want to accidentally send an emoji, a heart emoji, to a candidate when I meant it for my husband, right? So that's why separating the goal of the technology, sure, you could text direct from your phone to your candidates. It's possible. But my advice would be separate the two, and it's okay to have two different phone numbers. Even if you have to look into one of these other texting apps, if Text Recruit is too big of a robust app, look into one of the other ones, and I bet you there's going to be more coming out soon as well.
Very good. All right, things to ponder. This is everything that you've already said. So don't send links until you've already established a relationship, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if anyone thinks right now, if I had your phone number and I sent you a link to a job, there's no way you'd click on it, right? But if we have a dialogue and then I'm like, hey, this job just opened, you told me you wanted something in West Virginia that would give you 30% stretch and growth, here's the job, then you might click on it.
Right. Well, we are like a minute away from close. I can't believe this thing has flown so fast. Heather, thank you, for coming on. I know you're busy. Mm-hmm. I know you've got a lot of things going on, and I think this was just a wonderful, really cool approach to talk about a topic, texting, and especially against the tapestry of what everyone else is talking about, which is really a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence. It's nice to have somebody that's actually saying, you know what, yeah, all that stuff's cool. Well, we need to actually be more human, more in touch with people. So this, what's up on the screen right now is Heather's Text Recruit number, if I'm not mistaken. 605 789-5583. So we can take questions offline, and you can literally text Heather directly, and she'll text you back. She's put an hour or so aside for the ability to be able to follow up with folks.
Yeah, please send me a quick text. I'd love to reply.
Cool. Lex, what else do we have?
No, that's it. You guys, that was awesome. I didn't even have to, well, that's it. Thank you. You guys did great. I'll make sure I get the questions over to Heather and William if we didn't get to them. Please make sure you jot down Heather's number. And this recording will be available within 24 hours. We'll make sure we get everybody an updated link to the landing page. And yeah, that's it. You guys did a great job. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And go enjoy the rest of your day and shoot Heather a text message.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Thanks, Lex.
Thanks, William. Thanks, Lex.
Take it easy, everybody.